His first fast, of course, he did for nonviolence, to make sure that the workers didn't turn to violence.
There was talk of resorting to violence and of abandoning sort of the nonviolent ways that the movement had always espoused. Cesar was really worried about that. He felt and knew that if they resorted to violence, that the only counter to that is more violence. He decided to fast. He decided to recommit himself and the movement to nonviolence.
So he was giving his life so that others might have a better life. He did it very effectively.
For him, that was the way in which you ultimately achieved true life. That's the way in which one overcomes, if you will, mortality.
He would sacrifice himself for the good of those that couldn't speak for themselves.
Cesar did the second fast in Arizona when they passed a bill in Arizona that made it illegal for farmers to organize. I was in New York in charge of the boycott. Cesar told us on the phone that he was fasting. Of course, it affected me very strong. I got absolutely sick. I got physically ill when I heard that he was fasting. He was on his 8th day.
Fasting was a way to demonstrate that willingness to give of himself completely to principles and values that he held deeply.
He became truly a saint by giving more and asking for nothing.
He was always working harder than you were. He was always asking substantially more of himself than he ever asked of you. And that throughout his life, he had made such, in many respects, unfathomable sacrifices.
Whenever Cesar started getting a little chunky and eating a lot of bread, we'd say, uh-oh, we got to keep an eye on this guy because it was like he's ready to pull another fast. So he did the third fast in Delano, and this one was around the pesticide issue when so many farm worker children were dying.
That summer for me was really, it was very intense. I saw my grandfather go through a lot, and I saw him become very weak and very, I don't know, like he was almost gonna die. We were going out and doing leafleting in front of a supermarket in Fresno. I had approached this elderly woman and handed her a leaflet, and she immediately recognized the UFW symbol, the Black Eagle. And she looked me in the eye and said, "I hope he dies this time." And I wanted to run after her and punch her and make her feel what she had just made me feel. I finally decided that I was going to tell him. He looked at me and kind of smiled and said, "Mija, next time that happens to you, just look, her or whoever it may be, straight in the eye and tell them, I'm sure you're in his prayers too, and leave it at that."
Prior to the fast, he was just my grandfather, my Tata Cesar, and then after the fast, he was my hero.
His ability to speak to the depth of who we are as human beings was total. When he said, when we are really honest with ourselves, we must admit that our lives are all that truly belong to us. So it is how we use our lives that determines what kind of men we are. It is my deepest belief that only by giving our lives do we find life. I'm convinced that the truest act of courage, the strongest act of manliness, is to sacrifice ourselves for others in a totally nonviolent struggle for justice. To be a man is to suffer for others. God help us to be men.